Hey there everyone, just a quick video today, and this is on the topic of the Enraged skill runes. Which is better, Freezing Rage or Demon's Rage? Now, I feel a little responsible for this because when Freezing Rage came out, I think like many people in the community, I said that it was pretty good, I liked it. Now, back when it came out, we had a lot lower damage, so this 5,412 damage did seem like quite a bit more than it is now. But I didn't really value Demon's Rage powerfully enough. Like, maybe Demon's Rage wasn't out. I can't remember the exact order of things. No, Demon's Rage was out before. But in terms of valuing how good Demon's Rage was, it wasn't up there on my list. And in hindsight, I think it was originally my best skill runes for all classes video. I recommended Freezing Rage, and just after that, I realized I made a mistake and I should have recommended Demon's Rage. Anyway, a few years have passed, and people have always gone to Freezing Rage, and various people in the community who are strong knights and otherwise just people spreading information, they talk about Freezing Rage being really good, and I really want to kind of put a stop to that because I do not believe it's any good. There are very niche cases where it can be good, but anyway, I'm going to try and prove this first of all before I talk more about it. So we're here in the event. I've made myself invincible so we can just see the amount of damage it does to various things. Now there are 3 towers here, each have the same amount of health and stuff, so we can test things really easily on them. So first off, I'm going to show Freezing Rage. My character here has 300 promotion, recent sets and stuff. My elemental stats, right this minute, I have 126 water percent. So just for reference, that's what it is. We're going to increase the water a bit later on because the question on my Facebook group was, what percentage of water would I need to have in order for me to value Freezing Rage over Demon's Rage? Like, when is it going to do more damage than the damage buff of Demon's Rage? Anyway, so let's just see it in action here. When it triggers, I get hit a few times. It's going to trigger, and you can see it's doing hits of about 95,000 damage, water damage there. It's going to do 11 hits of that amount of damage. So in total, it's doing roughly 1 million. That's basically what it's doing. Now, if we compare this to other water skills, we've got Freezing Aura here, and I'm going to use Empowered Water Cleave. So just looking at it by numbers, if you look at the skill rune here, it's going to do 11 hits of 5,412. Now that 5,412, that's about, 60,000 roughly. If you just look at my damage stat here, I've got 80,000. Current players who are pretty strong, they have towards 100,000 damage suddenly when they're in PvP. So 60,000 damage it was, is roughly the equivalent to 60% water from some other skill. So if you look at Freezing Aura here, this does, with a single hit, it does 18,000 plus 80% water, which is roughly equivalent to 100% water. So that's going to be like, well, 1 2/3 of the damage that we saw from the entire damage from the not Freezing Aura, I'm trying to remember the names now, Freezing Rage. So it's going to do more than that total with a single hit of Freezing Aura. Similarly, on Empowered Water Cleave here, this does 176% water with the damage there, so it's going to do way more. So just by numbers, you can see it's going to do a whole lot more, but let's just go prove it. You can see the amount of damage on that, and I'm going to use the Demon's Rage buff for the damage percent extra boost, because we're kind of comparing the two of these, right? So this will be doing hits when you have the buff from Demon's Rage. So I have the damage buff on right now, and if I use Empowered Water Cleave, if it will let me actually target. Why is it not letting me target? Okay, let's use this. So it's doing hits of about 2.5 million, and you can see there it did half the health off that tower, and it's done just like a tiny amount from the Freezing Rage. The damage difference there is so enormous that basically the damage dealt by Freezing Rage is just pathetic. It's not worth factoring into anything. And when people say like, oh yeah, it's great water damage and stuff, it's not. This is just total proof. Like, if you want that passive damage being dealt to opponents in PvP and stuff without you actively having to hit them, yes, the hitbox of Freezing Rage is massive, but use something like Freezing Aura, because you just touch them with it a single time and you'll do more than the entire damage dealt by Freezing Rage over time. It's really not worth factoring in. Now, unfortunately, I can't actually target any enemies, so I can't show you the Empowered Water Cleave, but it's, similar effect. It's going to do tons of damage. So really, that's the main point I want to make, is that the damage from Freezing Rage is pathetic. So the main sort of uses of that are not worth factoring into anything, even if you have high water percent. Which actually, yeah, let's show this now. So I'm going to put on a few items here with some water elemental jewels on them. Increase my water to 366% here. So roughly towards double of what we had before. But anyway, let's attack this tower with the Freezing Rage Skull so we can see how much damage it will do now. And yeah, I'll just get hit a few times. It happens. So it's doing roughly double, doing the 186,000 or so. And you can see still overall not going to do much damage. I mean, that's going to do about 2 million. Now, if we go across and with this higher water percentage, again, I'm going to put the Demon's Rage buff on so we get that damage boost. Now using the Freezing Aura, it's going to do massive damage and it's actually going to go and kill that tower. Like, the damage is just way, way more. Anyway, so I hope that's enough to prove that the damage from Freezing Rage is rubbish. It's just not really worth factoring into things. What Demon's Rage does, sorry, I might have said Demon's Rage a second ago, I meant Freezing Rage. Demon's Rage, what it does is it extends the damage buff. So the armor buff is not so important. It gives you up to 100% bonus armor, but we've already got plus 100% from the passive. We've got plus 300% or 200% in PvP from the spikes thing. So adding an extra 100% onto that, it's like onto your 400%, it's 400% up to 500%. It's like a 20% damage reduction. It's quite handy, but it's not anything that special. It's not really what you're doing this for. What you're doing it for is the damage buff. And if we look here, if you get the skill to 99, it gives you plus 100% damage for 7 seconds. That damage buff as well. Remember, you got damage buff from strength passive already. Also, you've got auto crit. So for those 7 seconds, when you got the damage buff, you got auto crit. You can do a lot of damage. And after that 7 seconds ends, you don't have the auto crit anymore. However, what Demon's Rage can do is it keeps the damage buff on further. So it triggers up to 4 times, and it's from when they trigger, then you get that buff for the next 10 seconds. So in reality, what happens is you put this on, they don't actually trigger for, at least a few seconds, but you should get all 4 triggers before it ends. And so the damage buff you get extends from the normal 7 seconds, more likely onto 12 to 15 seconds. So it's pretty much doubling that damage buff duration. It doesn't double the auto crit, so you are more powerful in that first section, that first half, but the second half you do extend the damage buff. And the question which this ultimately came from was, in that extra damage buff range, how much water do I need in order to do more damage with the Freezing Rage rather than other skills which I could be using in that extra damage buff range? And just by numbers, it's really easy to see that a single skill use of any other water skill during that extra damage buff range is going to do way more than a Freezing Rage will do for you. So yeah, Demon's Rage is an awesome skill rune. It's very good for just keeping your damage output, giving you long periods of damage output. I've got a cooldown potion on right now, so you can see when I use this, it has a 13-second cooldown. Now I said this damage buff goes for like 12 to 15 seconds. So if you've got a cooldown potion on, you have basically constant damage buff of 100%. We can actually watch this. So I'm going to get hit by some things. Now the damage buff goes on because I used the skill, and it's now, the skill's ended, but it's still going on. It's going on further, and it still hasn't ended. I can use the skill again. So my damage buff just is remaining constant. Now if you get hit too much right at the beginning of when you use Demon's Rage, it's not going to extend for the full length of time, because it goes for 10 seconds. So you can see here it's ended just before I got to use it this time. But then, yeah, like there's small windows where it's not there, and otherwise you just have the constant damage buff. Now when you don't have a cooldown potion, obviously there's windows in between, but this is one of the biggest damage buff skills on Knight, and if you're not using Demon's Rage, you're missing out on a trick here. Freezing Rage is not that good at all. So the only places where Freezing Rage is useful is in farming, where it's a really good skill to just run past enemies, run past barrels and that kind of stuff, and they get killed without you having to waste time using skills on them. So there it's obviously very useful. The other very niche use, which in this Facebook post, someone in particular was going into it, and I didn't get a chance to reply to it because unfortunately the post sort of devolved into arguments, so I deleted the whole thing. But what I wanted to talk about there was this very niche use is is really, really niche, I think. And that is where you are fighting with another person, and the two of you are there smashing each other right in the face, and then another weaker person comes over, and you want to be able to hit and kill this other weak person, but you are stunned, you're polymorphed, you're silenced, whatever it is, and you can't easily go over and kill them, or get that little hit on them to get the final hit. And Freezing Rage, they're saying, if you're a really strong knight and you've got really high water, then it's a great way to just chip that bit of damage in to kill off the weak person. I really don't think it would do enough to actually kill a weak person. I mean, if they're that weak, literally any skill use would work for that, and you could use Hurl. Hurl would be incredibly effective for killing them. Otherwise, trying to get that final hit on them, because they're saying like, oh, if it does frequent hits, it's really good for getting that last little hit on them when they're on low health. Well, each little hit is tiny, so I can't really see that happening. And so the other thing is, it does a big area effect, so it's really handy for hitting things at a distance. I can't really see that being useful for actually fighting other people. The uses where I can see for that is maybe getting rid of frost drakes. If people are putting down frost drakes around the map and they're being really annoying, they can trigger this Freezing Rage, or if you just otherwise have Freezing Rage going. And yes, the area it hits is massive, so you can hit them from very far away. I'm just going to show you the area here when it triggers. So it's going to hit that thing on the right. It's not quite hitting the thing up at the top, but if I move here, it's going to hit it. And the way the things are done in King's Road, like things go a lot more horizontally than vertically. So I'm just going to trigger it again here, and I can show you the horizontal distance with this tower on the right. So yeah, it's going to hit it from this distance away. You can see that is a massive distance, and yeah, for sure, that is really good. Great for farming. You can use it to take down frost drakes. But to be honest, this is a damage buff skill, and that's what it should be used for. And Demon's Rage does it so well that I just can't see why you wouldn't want to use Demon's Rage. Anyway, that's enough from me. I've ranted long enough. I hope it's convinced you all that Demon's Rage is really good, and Freezing Rage, you should just keep it for farming, really.